Welcome to Midday, everyone. Joe Morano with you. We want to go right away to a press conference that's happening now addressing the duck boat investigation from the accident that killed 17 on Table Rock Lake early this year. Let's take a listen in.
Missouri. And I'm joined today by several members of our investigative team. To my right is Captain Scott Sturmer, who is the commanding officer of the Upper Mississippi River Sector of the United States Coast Guard. David Mills, the resident agent in charge of the Coast Guard Investigative Service, St. Louis office. Lieutenant Scott Sater and Sergeant Jason Pace of the Missouri State Highway Patrol. Chief Jeff Matthews of the Branson, Missouri Police Department. Matt Selby, the prosecuting attorney of Stone County, Missouri. And from my office, Supervisory Assistant United States Attorney Randy Eggert and Assistant United States Attorney Casey Clark. We are here today to announce the first criminal indictment related to the sinking of a vessel on Table Rock Lake in southwest Missouri, resulting in the tragic loss of 17 lives. This morning, a federal grand jury seated in Springfield, Missouri, returned an indictment against Kenneth Scott McKee, who was the captain of a vessel dubbed Stretch Duck 7, which sank during a storm on Table Rock Lake in July. The indictment alleges 17 counts of a violation of Title 18, United States Code, Section 1115, which is formally titled Misconduct or Neglect of Ship Officers, which is sometimes colloquially referred to as seaman's manslaughter. Each of the 17 counts in this indictment represents a life that was lost when Stretch Duck 7 sank while being piloted by Mr. McKee. Specifically, the indictment alleges that on or about July 19, 2018, on Table Rock Lake, which is a navigable water of the United States within the Western District of Missouri and within the Admiralty jurisdiction of the United States, that the defendant, Kenneth Scott McKee, while piloting, operating, and navigating Stretch Duck 7 as captain, pilot, and master of said vessel, committed several acts of misconduct, negligence, and inattention to duty. I'm not going to read each allegation against Mr. McKee verbatim, but I would like to paraphrase them for you this morning. To summarize, the indictment alleges that Mr. McKee failed to properly assess incoming severe weather, both prior to and after entering the water, Table Rock Lake. That he entered the vessel on the water while there was severe weather, including high winds and lightning approaching the area. The indictment alleges that McKee operated Stretch Duck 7 in violation of the conditions and limitations specified in the vessel's United States Coast Guard issued certificate of inspection. And specifically, he operated the vessel in weather which generated wind speeds and wave heights which exceeded those for which this particular vessel was rated. Further, he failed to instruct his passengers to don their personal flotation devices during the severe weather while Stretch Duck 7 was on the water. He failed to immediately increase the speed and make the most direct path to shore when severe weather arrived. He either caused or allowed the vessel's side curtains to be lowered and failed to raise them when severe weather arrived while the vessel was on the water. And again, failed to raise the side curtains, failed to instruct his passengers to don their personal flotation devices, and failed to prepare to abandon ship after each of 2 separate soundings of the vehicle's bilge alarms. And then finally, he failed to prepare to abandon ship when there was an unacceptable loss of freeboard, that being the distance from the surface of the water to the deck of the vessel. He failed to prepare to abandon ship when there was an acceptable loss of freeboard. The grand jury further alleges that McKee's acts of misconduct, negligence, and inattention to duty contributed to or caused the destruction of the lives of 17 people aboard Stretch Duck 7. A violation of this particular statute is a Class C felony under the United States Code, and a conviction under this statute carries with it a range of punishment of imprisonment for not more than 10 years and a fine of up to $250,000. I need to be careful to say that the allegations contained in this indictment are simply accusations, and they are not themselves evidence of guilt. If put to proof, it would be the burden of the United States Attorney's Office to present evidence at trial to a federal trial jury, whose duty it would be to determine innocence or guilt. Now, before I take your questions, let me say something about the way ahead. This indictment represents the beginning and not the end of our efforts in this matter. We're strongly committed to bringing this investigation to a conclusion as quickly as we can without sacrificing or compromising the integrity of this investigation. We owe that to the victims and the surviving family members of this tragedy. We also owe that to the public, which has an important interest in seeing that this statute is enforced. Due to the federal rules of criminal procedure regarding the secrecy of grand jury operations, I'm simply not at liberty to discuss the status of the investigation other than to say it is ongoing, or to make any comment about whether there will be additional indictments against any other person or entity. I'm only able to share this information with you today by virtue of the fact that this indictment has been returned by the grand jury. But as we have today, as soon as there are any developments that we are able to share with you, we will do our best to make ourselves available to you at that time. So, with that understanding about the limitations of what I'm able to discuss, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
The NTSB has said that someone stepped on the boat at 6:28 and said, "Go to the water first, land second." So did Captain McGee have a choice on whether to go in the water that night, and is that person being investigated?
Well, as to whether or not any other person is being investigated, I'm not going to comment on whether or not that might happen. The captain of the vessel always has a duty to operate his vessel in a safe manner, and that's why Mr. McKee is under indictment at this moment.
Is he in custody anywhere?
No, he is not in custody.
Do you anticipate him being arrested?
We have communicated the existence of this indictment to Mr. McKee's attorney, and we anticipate that he will surrender to himself.
Has he been cooperating through the investigation?
I'm not going to talk about anything pertaining to the investigation other than what's contained in the indictment at this time.
Mr. Garrison, are you saying that based on the weather conditions at the time, he should not have entered the water? That would have been the proper thing to do?
Well, different vessels have different ratings for what they are able to withstand, and we are alleging that Mr. McKee operated this particular vessel under conditions which exceeded those for which this vehicle was able to withstand.
How does it impact the civil litigation that's going on?
Well, again, we're not party to those cases. It's again part of the reason that we're trying to get our criminal investigation completed as quickly as possible is so that we provide as limited a hindrance to the prosecution of those civil cases. But I can't comment on how or if our case will affect those civil cases. The public has an interest, as do the victims, in the prosecution of criminal statutes as well. So, we are in constant communication with them, typically through their counsel, and always, as in any case in which there is a violation of criminal law involving a victim, we always try to communicate with the victims or their families.
Mr. Garrison, once the boat entered the water, it sounds like what the indictment is saying is that there were multiple opportunities for the captain to make a proper decision to return to shore, and he failed to make that decision. Am I interpreting that correctly?
I think that's a reasonable interpretation. Yes, and the specific allegations of misconduct or negligence, the indictment alleges either individually or cumulatively contributed to the sinking of the vessel.
It sounds like also you're saying that there is a way to safely operate one of these boats. There are people who would argue otherwise. I've seen other lawsuits called them death traps. Are you guys going anywhere near that, or is this just about operator error?
Well, today it's just about the operation of Stretch Duck 7 on July 19th, 2018. I'll leave to others to comment about whether or not these boats are safe under any condition.
Are you able to tell us more about the makeup of the grand jury? How many men and women are sitting on it?
That is governed by the federal rules of criminal procedure, and this was a properly constituted federal grand jury.
And Mr. Garrison, can you say at this time whether you would seek the maximum possible punishments in this case?
No, I can't say that at this time. That is a matter that will have to come under consideration once guilt is established.
You mentioned
Up to
bilge.
10 years, and on each count, would you seek consecutive terms?
That is simply provided for the public's information of what the statutory range of punishment is. We'll leave for another time what the government's recommendation would be if Mr. McKee is convicted.
You mentioned the bilge alarm. How many bilge pumps were on the duck boat, and what capacity did they have?
I don't have that information.
Are you aware that there was an electric bilge and that the Higgins had been removed?
I'm aware of media reports that have discussed that, but that is not part of the allegations against Mr. McKee, and so I'm not going to comment on that today.
And you can't say whether you're investigating that?
The investigation is ongoing.
I know you mentioned that you can't really comment on the civil side of things, but a big source of debate in that side of things right now is whether Table Rock Lake is a navigable waterway. I know you guys mentioned in your indictments that's, I guess, part of the charge is that this occurred on a navigable waterway. Do you know what repercussions that might have beyond the criminal side of things?
Well, I won't speak as to what repercussions that determination may or may not have, other than to say we have alleged and a grand jury has found probable cause to believe that there is federal jurisdiction over the criminal case in this matter. Specifically, the indictment alleges that Table Rock Lake was a navigable water of the United States and falls under the admiralty jurisdiction of the United States, which gives my office jurisdiction to bring this charge. Again, if that was a matter that were challenged, and I'm strictly talking about the criminal case, that is a matter for which we would have to produce evidence, and the court would have to rule on that matter.
On that regard, I've spoken to the Coast Guard several times and asked for different documents and records, and they have told us that they cannot release anything because your office has directed them not to. So what does that mean? Throughout the process, we won't get any records from the Coast Guard, and what is your opinion on that?
Well, we're operating.
You're taking a look at a press conference going on right now concerning the duck boat investigation that's going on from that tragedy that happened on Table Rock Lake in July. This is U.S. Attorney of the West District Tim Garrison that was speaking right there. The duck boat captain, Kenneth Scott McKee, is charged with misconduct and negligence resulting in 17 deaths at Table Rock, 1 count for each death right there. This comes from a federal grand jury that was in Springfield.